Next, we have Dr. Griffin Cole. Welcome.
Thank you. So this first slide, I think will end this entire argument in 15 seconds. This is the oral health director of the CDC being deposed by Attorney Michael Connett in this court case that you've heard about twice tonight. That's just 15 seconds. The sound is going to come from me, but the words are on the screen as well. Here, will you press that advanced button? When I press mine, I'll tell you when. You ready? Do it.
Is the CDC aware of any evidence demonstrating benefits from consumption of fluoridated drinking water during the first 6 months of life?
We are not aware of any evidence.
Okay.
Thank you. He also answered that same question for toddlers and children. CDC not aware of any evidence of any benefit from fluoridated water. This is arguably the largest proponents and supporters of water fluoridation. Okay. So you can also go to the CDC's website when it's up, and you can look at their oral health survey, and they'll show each state, and they look at third graders because that's about the right age, 8 and 9, to compare between water fluoridation and actual decay rates. Look at the top there. 2 of the least fluoridated in the entire country. New Hampshire has a 35% decay rate, and Vermont a 37%. Look at the highest fluoridated ones. Washington, D.C., 100% fluoridated, 60% decay rate. Kentucky, almost 100%, 60% decay rate. North Dakota, 96% fluoridated, 68% decay rate. You can look at all 50 states. I think Florida, the last time I checked, is about a 45.5% decay rate. There has never been a double-blinded, randomized clinical trial to prove that fluoridation actually works or is safe. This is the gold standard. It's never been done. There has never been a long-term follow-up study to prove that it actually worked. There's been plenty that have shown that it failed. And one that I'm very intimate with is my hometown of San Antonio, Texas. They started fluoridating in the year 2000. 9 years later, their Metro Health Department actually did do a follow-up study, and they looked at the most indigent parts of San Antonio, because that's who we're supposed to be helping, right? The ones who don't have access to good dental care. Well, after $3 million in 9 years, there wasn't a decrease in decay. There was an increase of 13%. Now, fluoridation didn't cause the increase, but the point is it didn't do its intended function. Oh, let's go back. Silicofluorides, because we heard twice tonight, I think, that fluoride is fluoride, and that's just not true. Silicofluorides have never been FDA approved for ingestion, and they were never proven safe prior to actually putting in our water supply. And silicofluorides are not the same thing as calcium fluoride. Okay, and this was proven by Johannes Westendorf in 1975. He was doing a study on this for his dissertation. Not only did he show an incomplete dissociation of silicofluorides under normal conditions, but he also showed that it blocked acetylcholinesterase, a critical enzyme for the regulation of our neurotransmitters. So even in 1975, we saw that there was an issue with the brain. We showed this earlier here. This is the Calgary study, and I was very proud that we actually saw the entire slide going back to 2005. Notice it's very linear. It wasn't going up in this abrupt increase after fluoridation ended. That's not true. It was going up in a very linear pattern. And there's the study that was quoted on there. So that's the study there from Lindsay McLaren. But I want to show you a graph from that actual study. And I highlighted in yellow for you. Calgary 1314, 6.4 mean, decayed, extracted, filled teeth. That's how they did it. 6.4 was the mean in Calgary. It was 6.6 in Edmonton. Now, if you look carefully, because I don't want to leave anything out, what they're bragging about here is that in 2004 and 5, it went from 2.6 up to 6.4. So that's a change of 3.8. Whereas Edmonton only went up a change of 2.1. Bottom line, Edmonton has been fluoridated since 1967. Why is it higher anyway? There's no correlation here. And this is an actual quote from the lead author when she was doing a commentary about the study, which happens often. Quote, in terms of permanent teeth, Carrie's experience actually decreased in Calgary during the time frame of the study. What about bottle-fed babies? This is what we're talking about. This is what Joe talked about, this is what Ashley talked about, what we all talk about here, right? There's no dose control. Mother's milk has 0.004 parts per million of fluoride. A bottle-fed baby, what's the major ingredient in their diet? It's water, and oftentimes tap water. And that baby's going to ingest way more for his or her weight than we will, as will athletes who drink a lot of water, as will outdoor workers. So they're going to get much more than 0.7 milligrams per liter. You cannot control the dosage. Okay, the Cochrane collaboration, it was mentioned earlier as the gold standard, and I would agree. Whenever we hear that there's a 25% reduction in decay, because we hear that a lot, right? That's the argument. That came from the 2015 Cochrane review. And if you look at that review and actually read it in detail, they went all the way back to studies dating to 1946. In this one, which just came out a few months ago in October, they said, you know what? We found that the studies prior to the early 70s were of lower quality, and 80% of all the pro-fluoridation studies came prior to that year, going back again to the 40s and 50s. What did we not have in those early years? There was no fluoride in toothpaste. Once we got the fluoride in toothpaste, we can now make the argument that we don't need to put it in the water. And look what their results came out this time. And by the way, when they went back to look at the studies, and they only went back to the early 70s this time, they could only find acceptable quality studies, 22 children's studies. That's it. Not these thousands and thousands you hear about, and none for adults. Average benefit now, 1/4 of one tooth. That's it. It's insignificant. It's like 2%. Here's some quotes from that actual one. We could not be sure whether adding fluoride to water reduced tooth decay in children's permanent teeth, end quote. Quote, we were unsure whether there were any effects on tooth decay when fluoride is removed from a water supply. And as it was mentioned earlier, the catfish study, which was done in England, it was a 10-year study on children, it found a reduction of only 0.16 decayed teeth. And here's the graph that they showed in the study. So your x-axis is the years, your y-axis is fewer cavities. And if you look back, sure enough, in the early 70s, maybe four cavities per kid. But look, as we get down to where we are now, it's insignificant. It's nearly zero. This is a study that probably nobody really even knows about. It took me years to actually find this because there's multiple studies that are under the umbrella, the Iowa study. But this, they followed children from birth, some up to age 27 and a half. But in this particular one that I'm showing you here in 2009, funded by the National Institutes of Health, they followed children from birth to age 17. And they did exams on their teeth. They did some dietary assessments, detailed intake questionnaires. The result from the 2009, this particular study, which is the one I'll show you on this next slide, no significant correlation between ingested fluoride and cavity reduction. They looked at everything, bone scans, everything. We're talking about decay here. No significant reduction in cavities. That's the actual study if you'd like to look it up. Again, this is one of, I think there's, I don't know, Ashley, 10 maybe now that they've done. Mostly the same authors, but other ones as well, to look at all different aspects of what happens when you follow someone from birth to at least age 17. And the Lotus study, this was the adult sister study to the one to catfish, also in England, 10-year cohort study, the largest one ever conducted, right? 6.4 million adults, largest study ever. Here's the results. 2% fewer cavities, just like the catfish one. No reductions despite social inequalities. It didn't matter whether you were poor or wealthy or could afford everything to do. They all brushed about the same. No reductions in missing teeth. And lastly, that fluoridation is likely a net economic loss when capital costs are included. So it's time to end this experiment. Okay, 95% of the world does not fluoridate. Only 5% does. Of the 5%, there's 11 countries that provide fluoride to over half of their populace. And of all those countries, the USA provides water fluoridation to human beings more than the rest of the world combined. And yet look at that graph to your right there. That's from the World Health Organization. That is showing fluoridated countries versus non-fluoridated and how decay rates have gone down consistently worldwide. You can't tell me which are fluoridated and which aren't. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.